Marriage doesn't fall apart in one day. It doesn't break because of a single argument or one mistake. Most marriages fade slowly, quietly, in moments no one notices. She used to believe marriage would feel like love with permanence. Like the same warmth, just safer. In the beginning, it did. He listened when she spoke. He noticed when she smiled. He held her hand in small, meaningless moments that somehow meant everything. They talked late into the night about dreams that felt close enough to touch. Love felt effortless then, as if it would always take care of itself. After marriage, life arrived without warning. Not dramatically, not cruelly, but steadily. Work schedules became longer. Responsibilities filled the spaces where conversations used to live. Evenings turned quiet, not the comfortable kind, but the kind where words waited and never came. She noticed the change before he did. Not because he stopped coming home, and not because he betrayed her. He was still there every day. But something invisible had started to disappear. At first, she tried to ignore the feeling. She told herself this was normal. Everyone said marriage changed things. Everyone said love matured. She convinced herself that missing conversations was a small price to pay for stability. But her heart didn't agree. It felt unheard, unseen, slowly learning how to stay quiet. She tried to talk. Gently at first. She mentioned how distant he seemed, how she missed the way they used to laugh together. He nodded, distracted, eyes still glued to his phone. "I'm tired," he said. "Work is stressful." She understood. She always understood. So she waited. Weeks passed. Then months. Waiting became a habit. When she spoke again, her voice carried more urgency. She asked for time, for attention, for presence. He promised things would get better. Promises came easily. Change did not. Arguments followed. Not loud ones. Not dramatic scenes. Just repeated conversations that ended the same way. She would explain how she felt. He would listen halfway. Nothing would change. Slowly, explaining turned into complaining, and complaining turned into silence. The day she stopped arguing was the day something inside her grew tired. Not angry. Not bitter. Just exhausted. She realized that words meant nothing when they weren't heard. Silence became easier than disappointment. He thought the absence of arguments meant peace. He didn't notice the difference between calm and withdrawal. He didn't see how she stopped sharing small details about her day. He didn't realize how often she cried in the bathroom just to avoid questions. In public, she smiled easily. Friends admired their marriage. They said she was lucky. She nodded and smiled because it was easier than explaining a pain she didn't fully understand herself. At night, lying beside him, she felt more alone than she ever had before. His body was there, warm and familiar, but his attention felt miles away. He scrolled through his phone while she stared at the ceiling, wondering how two people could be so close and yet so distant. He didn't cheat. He didn't leave, and somehow that made the pain harder to explain. There was no obvious reason to be hurt, no clear mistake to point to. Just absence. Emotional absence. Being married didn't mean being understood. It didn't guarantee companionship. Sometimes it meant sharing space without sharing hearts. She still loved him. That was the hardest part. Love didn't disappear when effort did. Love stayed, quiet and heavy, settling deep in her chest. She stopped asking him how his day was because he never asked about hers. She stopped dressing up because he never noticed. She stopped reaching for his hand because he never reached back. None of it happened suddenly. It happened slowly, one ignored moment at a time. He was present, but absent. He fulfilled responsibilities. He paid bills. He showed up. But his heart was somewhere else, lost in routine and stress and distractions he never questioned. He didn't realize that love needed more than presence. It needed attention. It needed care. There were days she imagined what it would feel like to be heard again. Not fixed. Not advised. Just heard. She wondered if all marriages reached this place, this quiet distance where love waited patiently to be chosen again. She wondered if staying silent made her strong or invisible. Sometimes love doesn't end with a goodbye. Sometimes it fades without warning, without closure. Just a growing distance that no one talks about. Marriage doesn't break loudly. It's neglected quietly. One evening, she noticed something shift. Not because he said something kind, but because he noticed her silence. For the first time, he looked at her and asked, "Are you okay?" The question startled her. She didn't answer immediately. She wasn't sure how to explain months of quiet pain in a single sentence. She wasn't sure he truly wanted to listen. But something in his voice felt different. Uncertain. Afraid. As if he was finally seeing the distance he helped create. She took a breath. And for the first time in a long time, she spoke honestly. She didn't raise her voice when she finally spoke. There was no anger left in her, only honesty. She told him how lonely she felt even when he was right beside her. She told him how silence had slowly replaced conversation, and how she stopped arguing not because she was happy, but because she was tired. Her words were calm, but they carried the weight of months she had spent swallowing her pain. He listened. At first, he wanted to defend himself. He wanted to explain how hard work had been, how pressure followed him everywhere. But something in her tone stopped him. She wasn't accusing him. She wasn't blaming him. She was simply letting him see what she had been carrying alone. For the first time, he noticed how quiet she had become. How her laughter sounded forced. How her eyes no longer searched for his when she entered a room. He realized that he had mistaken her silence for strength, when in reality, it was surrender. He had always believed that love stayed as long as two people stayed together. He didn't know love could feel abandoned even when no one left. He didn't understand that emotional absence could wound deeper than betrayal. Sitting there, listening to her speak, he felt something uncomfortable rise inside him. Guilt. Not sharp or dramatic, but heavy and undeniable. He asked questions then. Real ones. Not the kind meant to end a conversation, but the kind meant to understand it. He asked when she started feeling this way. He asked what she needed from him. He asked how long she had been hurting in silence. Each answer made him realize how late he was, and how close he had come to losing something precious without even noticing. She told him she never wanted perfection. She didn't want grand gestures or expensive gifts. She wanted presence. She wanted him to look at her when she spoke. She wanted to feel like a priority again, not an afterthought squeezed between work and distractions. She wanted to feel chosen. That word stayed with him. Chosen. He had chosen her once, on their wedding day, believing that choice would carry itself forward. He didn't know it had to be made again and again, in small daily ways. He didn't know that neglect wasn't loud. It was quiet, patient, and deadly to love. Change didn't happen overnight. There was no sudden transformation. But effort returned slowly, like light entering a room that had been dark for too long. He started asking about her day and actually listening to the answer. He put his phone away during dinner. He noticed when she looked tired. He noticed when she smiled genuinely instead of politely. She noticed too. At first, she was cautious. She had learned not to expect too much. Hope felt dangerous after disappointment. But his consistency softened her guard. She allowed herself to believe again, carefully, one moment at a time. They talked more, not just about responsibilities, but about feelings. About fears they never shared. About expectations they assumed the other already understood. They realized how much distance had grown simply because neither of them had known how to ask for what they needed. There were still hard days. Still misunderstandings. Still moments where silence tried to return. But now, they recognized it. They didn't let it settle. They spoke before resentment could take root. They learned that communication wasn't about winning arguments, but about protecting connection. Love after marriage felt different than love before it. It was quieter, deeper, more intentional. It wasn't fueled by excitement, but by choice. By patience. By effort that didn't seek applause. She felt seen again. Not perfectly, not always, but enough to feel safe. He felt closer to her than he had in years, surprised by how much he had missed simply being present. They weren't the same people they were before marriage, and that was okay. They were learning how to love who they had become. She understood now that staying silent had protected her from disappointment, but speaking had protected their marriage. He understood that being physically present wasn't enough. Love required attention, care, daily intention. Marriage, they realized, wasn't about avoiding conflict. It was about facing it together. It wasn't about never feeling lonely. It was about not letting loneliness live unspoken. It wasn't about staying the same. It was about growing without growing apart. Sometimes, late at night, she would think about how close they had come to becoming strangers sharing a life. The thought scared her, but it also made her grateful. Grateful that silence hadn't won. Grateful that love had been given another chance to breathe. He still made mistakes. She still had moments of doubt. But now, they chose honesty over avoidance. Effort over excuses. Presence over comfort. They learned that marriage didn't survive on promises made once, but on commitment renewed daily. And slowly, the space between them filled again. Not with noise, but with understanding. Not with perfection, but with effort. Love didn't return as it once was. It returned stronger, because it had been tested. Time passed, and with it came a quiet understanding neither of them had known before. The kind that doesn't need constant reassurance, but still asks for care. They learned that love was not something that stayed alive on its own. It needed attention, the same way a living thing needed air. Without it, even the strongest bond could begin to fade. There were moments when old habits tried to return. Days when work drained his energy and silence tempted him again. Nights when she felt the familiar fear of becoming invisible. But now, they noticed those moments. They named them. They didn't let them grow unnoticed in the corners of their marriage. She learned that her voice mattered. That speaking her truth did not make her demanding or weak. It made her human. He learned that listening was not a passive act. It was an expression of love. A choice to be present even when it felt inconvenient. Sometimes they talked about the version of themselves they almost became. Two people living parallel lives under the same roof. Two hearts slowly disconnecting without ever officially breaking. The thought humbled them. It reminded them how fragile love could be when taken for granted. Marriage, they realized, was not a destination reached on the wedding day. It was a journey that required constant direction. Without intention, it drifted. Without communication, it cracked. Without effort, it quietly suffered. She no longer smiled just to keep peace. She smiled because she felt understood. He no longer assumed silence meant everything was fine. He learned to ask, and more importantly, to listen to the answer without preparing a defense. Their love did not become perfect. They still disagreed. They still misunderstood each other at times. But now, those moments didn't scare them. They had learned that conflict wasn't the enemy. Disconnection was. There was a night when they sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that felt warm instead of heavy. He reached for her hand without thinking. She held it without hesitation. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't symbolic. It was real. And somehow, that made it more meaningful than any grand gesture ever could. She understood that love after marriage looked different than the movies promised. It wasn't constant passion or endless romance. It was consistency. It was showing up. It was choosing each other on ordinary days, not just special ones. He understood that being a good husband wasn't about fulfilling duties. It was about being emotionally available. About noticing changes. About caring enough to ask before distance had a chance to grow. They talked about the future with a new kind of honesty. Not idealized, not rehearsed, but real. They spoke about fears. About expectations. About how easily people could lose each other when they stopped paying attention. They promised not perfection, but effort. Not always getting it right, but always trying. Love didn't return as something loud and overwhelming. It returned quietly, settled gently between them, stronger because it had survived neglect. It carried the weight of lessons learned the hard way. It was no longer naive, but it was deeply intentional. She sometimes thought about other wives, sitting in silence, convincing themselves that this was just how marriage was supposed to feel. She wished they knew that their feelings mattered. That silence was not strength when it was born from exhaustion. That love deserved effort from both sides. He sometimes thought about how close he had come to losing something irreplaceable without ever meaning to. It taught him that intentions were meaningless without actions. That love was not proven once, but repeatedly, in the smallest moments. Marriage, they learned, survived not because people stayed, but because they cared enough to stay connected. Because they chose communication over comfort. Presence over distraction, understanding over assumption. There were still quiet nights, but they no longer felt empty. There were still challenges, but they no longer felt alone. They had learned how to find each other again before distance became permanent. Love, in the end, was not about never drifting. It was about noticing when you did, and finding your way back. And so their story continued. Not perfect, not effortless, but real. A reminder that marriage doesn't end with betrayal. It ends when silence replaces effort. And it survives when two people decide, every single day, to listen, to care, and to choose each other again.